The federal government has proposed 12.66 trillion naira as aggregate expenditure for the 2021 fiscal year on a deficit of 5.16 trillion naira. It will be partly financed by a total loan package of 4.28 trillion naira, while the rest would be from internally generated revenues. The proposals were contained in the 2021 to 2023 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper presented to the National Assembly by the President. It was presented on Tuesday this week. The proposal targets 481.41 billion naira as statutory transfers, 5.75 trillion naira as recurrent expenditure, 3.33 trillion naira for capital expenditure, and 3.12 trillion for debt servicing. Now, other critical parameters and assumptions upon which the proposals are based are $140 as all benchmark and 1.86 million barrels as crude oil production per day and 360 naira to a dollar as exchange rates, amongst others. A development economist, Dr. Emeka Okengo, joins me now from our studio live in Abuja. Thank you very much, Dr. Okengo, for your time, and it's good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you too.
Now, first, I want to start with the early submission of the financial, that's our budget. That's looking very good on one side. It's now becoming like a norm. Now, going back to the organic budget year calendar. 2020 budget, if we remember, was presented to the President on October 8, 2019. The earliest before this was in 2014. Now, let's start on that note. How does that come to you, talking about going back to the organic calendar?
Well, that's the way it should be. It comes as us beginning to do the right things. It's the way to go. The Senate is even saying that they want this by September. And the moment you're able to do this, then the oversights and the inputs and the evaluations and reviews, can be done, and then you can hit the ground running 1st of January. It's not to be celebrated. I mean, for me, it is a norm. Okay, we have just returned to what is it, or to what it should be. So it's kudos to government, and I hope they keep it up.
All right, good. So it's really not worth celebrating. It is a norm. I like that from Dr. Okengo.
Yes,
now running a deficit of 5.16 trillion naira. In 2020, we did 5.2 trillion naira. And looking at what we have now, revenues not coming in as it's supposed to be. COVID-19 challenge continues. How do you see this playing out in the coming year?
Well, what's important is that you must be able to look at all the other reviews from both the IMF and then all other global acclaimed institutions. Everybody knows that, well, the world is in recession already, according to the IMF. Even almighty America is going to be, experiencing maybe about 0.08 to 0.09 negative growth. I think it's only China that are predicted thus far would have a 1% growth in the positivity. What it is that, again, the same reports also indicate that by 2021 a lot of these economies are going to rebound, both the emerging economies and the developed economies. So it's not all bad. What we have a situation, we're slowly beginning to live with it. We're slowly beginning to appreciate the new normals. We're also beginning to slowly see the advantages therein contained. But each time we have a conversation on budgets, I keep reminding you that budget is what you call a financial plan that you have cast in figures. And this one you're reading now are based on assumptions. And I think it is important that we allow this 2020 budget to play out. And from the claims, and the position of the Federal Ministry of Finance, they are saying that they are aiming at doing over 80% of this. And if we're able to, do this route of getting it up to 80% or maybe above, in expenditure and in completion or in execution maybe, I think that might be able to bring down the deficit that we'll be experiencing maybe in the 2021. So I think it's all about, we must leave it at the realm of what it is now, perception, assumptions, until we're able to go into, the third quarter of a budget. That is when we can now concretely be able to, make a very positive pronouncements on it.
Now, this is 17% higher than the revised budget for 2020. 2020 budget was 10.8 trillion naira, and we're doing 12.66 now. Then now let's look at the key underlying assumptions. You've talked about that upon the proposal, all benchmark at $40 per barrel. Daily crude oil production of 1.86 million barrels as against 1.8 in 2020. Exchange rate at 360 naira to $1. How realistic do you see all of this?
Extremely realistic. Extremely realistic. Like I said, from the global perception and the reviews, they're extremely realistic. And I think they are not ambitious at all. If anything, I think they're caught. The most important thing is that we're not making, bogus assumptions anymore. Like I might dare to say we used to do in the past. Oil at $40 is not being ambitious. The exchange rate at 360 is not also being ambitious. Oil production with the CAM in the Niger Delta now at 1.6 is also not being ambitious. I think these are all realizable, streams that can be achieved. What's more is that, remember that with the economic stimulus program, the government is actually now looking at re-engaging the rail sector. And I think that a lot can be able to come out of our place if we do this. I think it's a very, very realistic, doable and achievable, program for me.
One thing for Nigerians is when they hear budget, they want to see projects. They want to see execution of infrastructure, development. They want growth. Everybody wants inclusive growth. Job creation. Now, how well are we going to see projects implementing all of this? Talking about revenue. I go back to revenue. Thank God for something like Sukuk that we've had also used to bridge this gap. How well do you see all of this playing out in 2021?
Well, unfortunately, projects, especially capital projects, are also not like open sesame, or you don't conjure them out of a bottle. You just wake up and say, okay, I want a road from Lagos to Enugu, and then you wake up and the next day the road is there. That's not how it runs. Okay, sometimes these projects that you want to see also have a start and a finish. And unfortunately, they don't start and finish immediately. What's important is that, these plans are there. We are seeing the rails, coming on slowly but surely. We are seeing infrastructure like the Onitsha Head second bridge coming on slowly but surely. We are seeing the Lagos or express road coming on surely but slowly. And you mentioned the Sukuk funds. We are also seeing roads across the country coming on surely but slowly. But because there is slowly a need, people are want to say, oh, when is this going to, come to fruition? Until you have that full project cycle. And 80% of the times, most projects of that nature do not run a 12-month cycle. So I think for Nigerians, I think for me, like I said, the way for us to go now is the way of optimism. Okay, being able to know that, yes, there's a COVID crisis. It is not only in Nigeria. This is the time we actually need, to do a lot of inward looking, a lot of tightening of beds, if you may, a lot of socially inclusive projects, if you may, so that at least let's be able to now focus on those basics, okay, that we need to keep us alive and well. And in this instance, for me, if you want me to digress a little, I'll be saying that the biggest infrastructure that Nigeria should be aiming at now should be food infrastructure. The moment we're able to get food security as a major infrastructure output, if you may, then I think we'll be able to now wait until the other ones that might take a longer period will mature. So for me, the most important of all the infrastructure we need to begin to do are those infrastructure that can be able to support food production, food security.
Food, very, very importantly, there you touched on food, but we still see inflation even on that side. It's still staying on the high side. And doctor, there's this issue also about not removal of subsidy one way or the other, or deregulation of the downstream sector, which many say one way or the other could also cause increase in the price of PMS. If that happens, transportation, movement of food produce from the rural areas to the urban areas, definitely there will be an effect one way or the other. Are we looking at all of this holistically
Well, it depends on what you call subsidy. It depends on where you place subsidy. You know, a subsidy is supposed to be a production instrument. Okay, when you give tax reliefs, it's actually subsidies. So it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about price differential, where you are now paying, you know, for the difference in cost of production, selling cost, and then cost you want to, you know, you want your people to be able to buy it, then you must be looking at that product and its importance, you know, in your production architecture. So for me, if you're talking about under recovery, which is what I think you're hinting at, where we are probably now paying for the difference between what the producers are able to produce and then what we think our people can be able to afford. But you're also forgetting that there are so many other instruments, or there are so many other variables that we can also do in supporting infrastructure. The CNG is there. It was a project that was started some time ago. It's something we can be able to pursue. A lot of countries in the world are going the way of CNG, and I'm talking about compressed natural gas, you know, for transportation. The rail lines are also coming up, and these are not going to be using, you know, PMS. And, you know, the PMS does not in any way run mass transportation. And all our heavy-duty trucks and all that don't run on PMS. So I am in support totally and completely of the removal of what you call subsidy, what I call under recovery, or what I call price differential. You know, but what is important is for us to be able to create those things that can be able to alleviate, you know, the impact of removing these things on our transportation system. So you need to look at transportation and infrastructure to find out how we can be able to make it a little bit more intermodal. Okay, to be able to now truly develop what you might be able to call your mass transport models, as against, you know, the 4-seater, 3-seater transport systems we have that are putting a lot of cost on the movement of goods and services.
I know, I've learned that's another word for subsidy now. So it's either we call it, it's either under recovery. I agree with you. It's really under recovery and differentials, because we know that with what we are paying for. Let's now look at debt servicing. That's also something that is very important when you talk about a financial plan for a country for a year. Now, what are you looking at when it comes to how we'll service our debt this time around? It seems to be very worrisome. Funds even coming from the likes of FRS, from agencies, are kind of dwindling. Okay,
you also need to put a definition to what you call debt. Okay, there are two kinds of debts. There are debts that you can call your capital injection. Okay, there are debts you take to be able to build infrastructure. There are also debts you take to be able to do your consumables. Now, if you have taken debt to be able to put into your infrastructure, and like I said earlier, this infrastructure is not going to be maturing overnight. It's going to be taking time to be able to mature. But when it does come into stream, you are able to now start earning income to be able to now pay back this debt. And remember that most of these debts are not debts that are also, you know, 2-3 year, you know, debts. There are years that run into decades, maybe minimums of 25, you know, sometimes up to 30 years, you know, for payment. But if you're talking about debt servicing, that is where you now talk about creditworthiness and credibility. That's where you talk about integrity. Okay, if you must borrow to be able to expand your infrastructure, remember, you know, that you're borrowing at a cost. You are buying money, okay, and you must pay for the cost of that money you're buying. That's technically what it means. So if you are taking 1 trillion or to be able to service a debt that might be able to help you, you know, make 10 trillion in 20, 30 years time, it now becomes all about your debt management. Okay? If you're able to have a proper debt management system and you keep, you know, up to speed and keep faith with your payment schedules, you exit your debt trap. Okay, most people don't exit debt traps because somehow, corruption comes into it, misappropriation comes into it, misallocation comes into it, misuse comes into it. But the moment you're able to keep, you know, to the terms of engagement and terms of agreement of you to borrow or buy that money, you know, it might take some more time, but a lot of countries have come out of debt. You know, you must have debt. That's very important, and that's a point I keep making to people. You must borrow money. Even you in a TVC, I'm sure your management has gone into 1 or 2, you know, debt programs to be able to get you people to where you are. But it is what you do with that money, the infrastructure you use, you put that money into that matters, you know, at the long run, if you are able to exit your debt or you're going to sink deeper into it.
Indeed. Now let's round up this way. I think I see a little bit of more synergy between the fiscal side and the monetary side at this time. You know, before now, well, many arguments, analysts with their views, some are saying there was no proper synergy with both parties. But this time around, I see government making efforts, and I also see the central bank and, you know, even commercial banks trying to support government really at this time to make things better than it used to be. What do you make of this?
I see that too, but I also see a lot of opportunities. Okay, like I keep telling people, I see more opportunities, you know, I see more advantages than I see disadvantages. So it's the best time to invest. It's the best time for any commercial bank to get into the Nigerian real sector. That is just what it is. Okay, it's the best time for government to begin to support. I mean, you just mentioned the fund. I heard about one about youth. It's time we begin to put our money into things that can be, because I mean, everybody is locking everybody out. And those states are able to now look inwards, and we are blessed. My brother, we are blessed with practically everything we need. All we need to do is to convert our human resources into human capital. And this does not require Western education. This requires for us to be able to start honing the skills of our people and then make these skills demand-driven. Okay, we have a lot in the real sector. The value chain of the real sector is endless. You know, from people who can be able to fix, to electricians, to mechanics, to machinists, to practically everything. So if we are able to appreciate and understand that we have natural endowments that have remained pedestrian or pristine because we have not been able to now, you know, put the proper value that can be able to now make it globally competitive, and we begin to address those issues. Trust me, you know, I think by the end of the day, even the 5.3 IMF projection growth for developing emerging economies, I see Nigeria, you know, being able to do probably up to 7 or 8% if we look, you know, truly inwards. So I think what's happening now is that opportunities are being taken by those who should take it. The central bank has done exceedingly well. You know, I give them a lot of kudos. The commercial banks are also all trying to support in one way or the other. But like I keep telling people, it's also not a tea party, okay? They are not also Father Christmas. For everything you see them do, go and look at the underlying principles, especially the commercial banks. There's a lot of profit that can be made.
Dr. Emeka Okunga, I must tell you, it's very nice having you on the show. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.